In a quiet village, lost between dense forests, there was a dark and mysterious past that lived in the hearts of its inhabitants. Every year, without exception, one of the men of the village disappeared, as if swallowed up by the darkness of the forest itself, leaving no trace. Local inhabitants were silent about their fears, preferring to turn a blind eye to the horror that had become part of their reality. The little boy's mother, having experienced the village's secrets herself, could not leave her son without answers. She knew that she had to convey to him the truth, no matter how dark it was. In her own childhood, when she was only 8 years old, she first encountered the horror that plagued their village. A creature from the forest, humanoid but with hooves, a long tail and horns, became a frequent visitor to her nightmares. In her dreams, it came to her, playing various games, including dancing around the fire and hide and seek. Smiling terribly with its strange smile, it plunged her into a world full of unknown dangers and magical adventures. But these games with the mysterious creature came at a price. A month after her first meeting with him, one of the men of the village disappeared. And he didn't just disappear, but seemed to disappear into thin air, leaving no trace of his existence. The village was in alarm, because the man disappeared a week earlier than had happened before, and none of his belongings were found. Was she destined to meet the same fateful end? The mother stumbled over this thought, feeling horror take over her thoughts. Such events, it seemed to her, concerned only the men of the village. But she wasn't sure that there was any pattern or rule that excluded women from the list of potential victims of the mysterious creature from the forest. But now she could not move on from her past without passing it on to her son. Her heart sank as she told him about her dreams, about the creature from the forest, about the missing men, about the mystery that was part of every magical ray of light in this village. The mother noticed how her son was silent, as if he was afraid to say something, but she insisted, and finally the words came out of his lips. "I also play hide and seek with him." Her heart froze in horror. It was a confirmation of her worst fears. Her son was also connected to what lurked in the forests, to this mysterious creature that took their lives like objects of games. Now she had to protect her son, prevent him from becoming another victim of this sinister influence. But how, if even she herself did not know how to cope with this dark force? The history of this village continued to develop, pulling its inhabitants into an abyss of secrets and horrors, where every step could be the last, and every dream could be an invitation to a world of nightmares. She couldn't afford to disappear. The men of the village were disappearing, and this was a reality she had to cope with. The mother decided to understand what was happening and find out the truth, despite all the risks. She began researching her own past, remembering her childhood dreams and encounters with a mysterious creature. She realized that the answer was somewhere in the dark forest that surrounded their village. One day, under the cover of darkness, she decided to go into the forest in search of the truth. She alone armed herself with only the courage and determination to unravel the mystery that tormented her and her neighbors. As she moved deeper into the forest, the darkness seemed more and more dense, and whispers and rustles seemed to be heard from all sides. Her heart beat faster, but she continued to walk forward, heading towards the place where she met her nightmare. Suddenly, she heard a rustling behind her. She turned around, but didn't see anyone. Her imagination played with her, but she couldn't stop. She continued to move forward, but more and more often she felt that someone was watching her. And finally, she reached the hearth of the place where she had once played with this creature in her dreams. And as luck would have it, her son followed at her heels for literally a minute. She stood and scolded him. She stopped and peered into the darkness around her, and suddenly she heard rustling and laughter. The mother and boy, realizing their mistake, decided to make contact with the creature. They knew that games with him were inevitable and decided to use this to their advantage. "We know you're here," the mother said, trying to sound calm and resolute. "We want to talk to you." In response to their words, the whisper became stronger, and a creature emerged from the darkness, its eyes sparkling in the darkness. "What do you want from me?" asked the voice of the creature, sounding like the whisper of the wind. "We want to know why you are taking our men," answered the mother, trying to hide her fear. "I take them for no harm," said the voice. "I just love to play and they play with me." but sometimes games don't end the way they expect. "Can you stop taking our men?" the boy asked, his voice sounding bold. The creature smiled its sly smile, its eyes sparkling, reflecting the moonlight. "Is there anything else I can do for you to make up for the loss?" The mother and boy exchanged glances, and a thought sparkled in their eyes. "We want you to protect our forest from danger," the mother said, her voice sounding firm. The creature thought for a moment, and then nodded its head. "This is an agreement," said the creature. "I will protect your forest, and you will play with me only according to your will." The mother and boy nodded in agreement, knowing that they had reached an agreement with this cunning creature. And although they knew the future could be unpredictable, they were willing to accept it, knowing that they now had an ally in the fight for their village and their world. After the agreement was concluded, the mother and boy returned to the village, but their hearts were full of anxiety. They realized that they had made a huge mistake by trusting the creature from the forest. The mother understood that the contract with this cunning and mysterious creature was the biggest mistake of her life. Now that she thought about it carefully, it became clear to her that she should not have acted so frivolously. The creature they agreed to protect the forest could be the biggest threat to the village. The mother understood that her child was in danger. She felt guilty for her determination to reach an agreement with the creature for the sake of her desire to find answers. She now realized that her thirst for knowledge had cost her dearly, and she was willing to do whatever it took to protect her son. But how could one free oneself from a contract with a being that possessed such power and cunning? The mother thought about it, and her thoughts led her to one conclusion: they had to find a way to reverse this agreement. Again and again, she turned over her options in her mind. She knew it wouldn't be an easy task, but she was willing to do anything for the sake of her son and the safety of the village. Together with the boy, they began to explore ancient records and legends that were kept in the village library. They hoped to find something that would help them solve the mystery and free themselves from their bonds with the creature from the forest. But time passed, and the pressure on the mother became more and more. She understood that every day she spent in this agreement increased the risk for her and her son. She had to find a way to free herself from this threat before it was too late. 3 years have passed, and none of the men in the village have disappeared during this time. This fact became commonplace for residents, and they began to get used to the absence of new disappearances. But mother and child continued their secret investigations, not losing hope of finding a way to free themselves from the creature from the forest and its contract. However, when the creature appeared in the boy's dream and commanded him to come to the forest, their entire safety was threatened. The boy told his mother about his nightmare, and she, realizing that time was running out, decided to take the situation into her own hands. She calmed the child and mixed sleeping pills into his food, hoping that this would give her the necessary time to take further action. But in the morning, waking up and not finding his mother at home, the boy panicked. He could not contain his fear and resolutely went into the forest in search of her. For 3 days, the boy wandered through the forest, searching every corner, but there was no sign of his mother anywhere. Fear and despair took over him, and he did not know what to do. Time passed slowly and hope began to fade. The boy returned to the village, but his heart was full of pain and uncertainty. He accepted his fate, but a secret feeling of anxiety did not leave him. After 15 years, silence continued in the village, and no one disappeared, but the past horror haunted him. Late at night, the daughter of a now grown boy began to cry. He and his wife ran to her to find out what had happened. The girl told them about her nightmare. She saw a creature with hooves and horns, and its presence filled her with fear. It was the same nightmare that had plagued her father and grandmother, and it had returned to remind them of its existence.